This one is, for instance, from the region of Yusuflu in Bayındır, in the close area of Bayındır, and has been photographed by Hüseyin Baloğlu. We can clearly see a 5th century or 4th century tumulus entrance to the dromos. And if we compare the shape of these doorways with the other tumuli that we know from Lydian area, we come to the conclusion that the tumuli here in Cayster Valley during the Iron Age and Lydian periods are differing in terms of typology. So also we can see in their other aspects. For instance, we have another here. We have another tumulus here, which is a newly recently found tumulus here in the region of Kiraz. And so we can see 2 illegal ditches and some structure, especially the marble structures, are similar to the ones from Lydia, but are also different in terms of some aspects. This tumulus is known from the area of Tire, where they found an ashlar masonry which has been used as a tower. So we believe that some of the tumuli in the region has double periodizations. They first used in the period of Lydians and maybe in Iron Age, but then reused in Hellenistic and Roman periods as sort of watchtowers or as for fortifications. Next to this tumulus, we were able to find this relief, a rock cut relief here with a flat surface, where we can discern an eros as well as another figure here, which are framed in a nice coed format. So we believe that this should be a sort of a rock cut sanctuary next to the open air sanctuary next to the tumulus. So the tumuli in the region of Tire were multifunctional. But not only tumulus, but also the material which are connected with the tumulus are very interesting in Cayster Valley. Here we have a phallus with a clear inscription, Attalos. Well, Attalos we know very well from onomastics, but this Attalos should be one of the very few ones that we know from the Cayster Valley. We cannot really date those phallos according to their typology, but we can say more or less that they are more or less belonging to Greco-Roman periods, and this one is particularly interesting because normally we have no inscriptions on phallos. Another tumulus that we know is from Kiraz, where we found this very interesting tunnel, maybe a dromos to the tumulus, which has been damaged later in Byzantine and Ottoman Turkish periods. But we were lucky to find out this very interesting corniche with bucapelion and bucranion, which is also something very, I would say, rare for this area. This should be a corniche block for an entrance and should be dated into Hellenistic period. So this is also another indication of reuse of tumulus in later periods, in Hellenistic and Roman periods. This one is a chamber, burial chamber from Tire, from a tumulus in Tire, which has been excavated by Byzantine and Ottomans in the later periods. But then they found this very clear chamber where we can clearly see the tomb carved in the right in the rock. We were also lucky to find out this piece, which should be associated with the burial chamber of this tumulus. This piece, which is now being stored in the Museum of Tire. And also this lid should be belonging to this part. So we are lucky to find these 2 pieces to reconstruct the opening area of the tumulus. So I would like to now present you some results about our pottery research. We have lots of pottery in this local museums in Ödemiş and Tire, which are very close to Lydian tradition. Here we have a skyphos, with some geometric patterns, but is clearly an early archaic piece, which is very similar in terms of decoration, in terms of patterns, in terms of typology, and in terms of colors to Lydian pottery, but still a little bit different in different variations. What is the most important find here in the local museums are the Lydia. Here we have one piece of it. We have several Lydia. Even in one Lydion, we were able to find this hoard, this coin hoard. So if we check those Lydia carefully, we come to the conclusion they have different typologies, and the typologies do not really change for a long time, and it is very difficult to discern what type of objects they did really content, and were they exclusively made for the tumuli, or were they also used as profane sort of container during the lifetime? So there are several questions raising with those typologies, but the most important thing is that we have hundreds, thousands of those objects in the local museums, and most of them were found intact in the tumuli of the region. In some reliefs, we can also see that type of objects like this alabastron, for instance, here. So I think Lydia, Lydion, the plural is Lydia, are connected with funerary life in Cayster Valley. And we have also that type of lekitoi in the region, which are not very, I would say, typically Greek, but Lydian in shape, and also in painting. So they are basically marble imitated ones, and they are very common in this region. That type of lekitoi. Anatolian variation, a Lydian Caysterian variation of lekitoi in Ödemiş, and also local cups like this ones, again from the archaic and classical period, as well as some plastic animal jug forms like this one, and also few choroplastic examples like this one here. So these are very important for us to understand how did they really make human figures during the archaic and classical period. They seem to be very similar to the ones that we know from Sardes, from Lydia. But as I said, they differ in very small details. And also like this terracotta bull. And in the Museum of Afyonkarahisar, we have, of course, several Lydia, and this picture, and this one here, which is very similar to Corinthian Ariballoi. But as I said, this is an imitation, local imitation of Corinthian Ariballoi in Lydia, as well as these pictures, which most of them should be found in graves, in burials, especially in tumuli. Now I would like to present you our result about the Greco-Roman funerary and votive monuments, Minema, Minemion in the Cayster Valley. Here I made a classification of the graves that we found. We know sarcophagi in the region. We know cinerary caskets that we call osotekai. We know rectangular altars. We know cylindrical altars. We know bench altars, freestanding statuary, temple-like tombs, steles, and other type of tomb monuments. And from those monuments, we have several Hellenistic and Roman period grave goods like this ones, this amphora, very interesting amphora, and this very nice skyphos, as well as lots of angienteria from different periods, from early Hellenistic to this middle Hellenistic form and this late Hellenistic form, as well as lots of lamps, of course. So if we conclude all those grave goods of Hellenistic and Roman periods for Caystros, we come to the conclusion that the culture was extremely Greek during the Hellenistic period and during the Roman period, with some influences from Italy, but it remained as Greek until the very late Roman periods. The Roman period, and we can clearly see the same type of typologies right on the coastal parts of Asia Minor. Now I would like to present you a little bit result about our early Byzantine research in the area. Here we have Cayster, Küçük Menderes. I don't know where I have taken, but maybe in Selçuk. In the early Byzantine period, the number of the sites have been exploded. We have several höyük sites, magula, or mount sites in the region, like this one here, Gölda near Tire. And the most important structure in höyük sites are kerpiç, which is mud brick. Kerpiç is the Turkish word for it. And we can clearly see agricultural activities in the area. So as Ali pointed out, the number of cities are low, but the number of provincial areas, rural areas are extreme. We have several villages with lots of that type of that type of agricultural pieces, agricultural elements, and lots of tiles in the area, roof tiles. In some areas, we are lucky to discern some kerpiç, some mud brick construction, but it is very difficult to date them, of course. We cannot say, oh, these are archaic or classical or Hellenistic. It's very difficult. But from some pieces, we are suspicious that they should be Roman and Byzantine period. In one area, we are very lucky to find this very interesting piece of marble, because we know that in the region there are also marble transportation as well as marble quarries. In one of the ancient marble quarry, we were able to find these three figures, one figure here and two next to it, a bald guy, another guy here as portrait perhaps, or at least heads, and one person here with an object, perhaps a drill. We believe that these are perhaps the owners, and they are sort of portraits or heads for this marble source in the area. And the name of the area is Mermertepe, which is marble hill on the road to Tire and Bayındır. And in the region, of course, the number of marble elements are extreme. We have several hundreds of thousands even capitals in the region, especially Ionic and Corinthian ones, not only in Roman period, but also in Byzantine period, as well as we have some sites where we were able to discover some mosaics. For instance, this one is from Kiraz, very close to the area of Kiraz, where we discovered this very interesting floor mosaic. Not very well preserved, but eventually published. And next to it, we were able to find these two elements. Perhaps one should comment them as a sort of a courtyard with some marble elements, with some maybe tables, and with some, maybe a piscina. But these type of elements have sometimes inscriptions. For instance, this one is from Kara Kadı Mosque. I would like to ask Maria if she knows it already, because I checked her publication but couldn't find it. Here we can see clearly Agata Tühe He Bule Kai Hodemos, which is very important for us. This part has already been defaced, so we only have these two lines. It should be an altar, maybe, in terms of monument. But it's a very interesting thing because it reports a bule, a council, as well as a demos, a public for Cayster Valley. I'm suspicious if this is from Birgi, from Dios Hieron, or from Hypaipa, because I don't know if we know a third city in the region, but this piece is far from those sites. It's 40 kilometers far. It is in Tire. Built in a mosque, which is built itself in the 14th century. So I'm asking myself, how should we interpret this piece? And then I have this new inscription. I was suspicious if Mariana knows this one too, because it's a very new one. But I checked her reports in Araştırma Sonuçları and couldn't really find it. I'm suspicious about one piece that Mariana has already documented. One should really discuss about that. I date this one into the 4th century AD. So these are one of the very few ones from the early Byzantine, late Roman period, the epigraphic pieces. And of course, we have several hundreds of blocks which are belonging to churches in the area, local churches, early Byzantine local churches, Most of the churches were built with marble elements combined with wooden, of course. So this is one of this here. And yes, this one here, and as well as this one. So I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Laflı. How it's so rich and impressive, the material from this, you know, all the periods from prehistory almost to nowadays. So we'll have to discuss later on a lot of issues on this material. And now we'll have to proceed to our next presentation, which is going to be, it's again with Professor Laflı and Professor Binur Güler on the Greco-Roman small finds from the Cayster Valley and their contribution to the chronology of the region. Please, you can start with your paper.
Yes, thank you very much. That's very kind. I would like to just show you the thing. Binur Hanım has just left a PowerPoint that I need to show on her behalf. I would like to tell you, can you now see the PowerPoint presentation, perhaps? Should I make it bigger a little bit? Can you now see, Maria, the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, it's very, it's clear. It's,
okay, thank you very much.
Whole screen.
Thank you. Yes, well, the presentation is by Professor Binur Güler from the Department of Archaeology here in 9 Eylül, İzmir. Binur Güler is a very well-known name in Turkish archaeology, in Anatolian archaeology, in terms of museum studies that she continuously did in the last 30, 40 years, starting from Tire and enlarging the perspective to Izmir and Bergama. She published first in the year 2000 the glass catalog of the Museum of Tire, which is a very big contribution for Turkish glass studies for Anatolian archaeology. And then she published later on the bronzes from the same museum in Tire. And eventually she published other catalogs in different parts of Western Turkey. So this presentation is some of the glasses that she presented in her book of the year 2000. Here we have this type of Angienteria from the mid-Roman period, which are very well known from the Eysenck's catalog of 1950s that she dated, that she classified as Form 6. These types are very common here in Tire and in generally in Western Asia Minor, and we believe that they were found in Roman burials in the area, and some of them should be sort of produced locally, and not even in Ephesus, maybe already in Cayster Valley, but we cannot really define where they should be. We also have that type of beakers or that type of glasses, which are very famous, which are very common in Middle Roman period. They are especially common, they are especially frequent for Cayster Valley, as some of the burials are perfectly protected in the region. So these are indications of this, sepulchral material inventory in the region. Then we have this very interesting and very beautiful Eysenck's 14 form of Jack, which is actually 2nd century, very typical second to early 3rd century. They are very famous. They are very frequent here in this region. When we compare the glass evidence with the evidence from Ephesus, we could say that the Tire glass are much more protected, much more intact, so that they are believable to publish and to share with the other colleagues. And some authors do believe, some researchers do believe that these bottles were carrying some medicals in the Roman periods, and some do believe that they were covering some liquids, such as some oils, some sacred oils, or some even wine, sacred wine in the burials. And we have also that type of degenerated bottles in the region of Tire from mid-3rd to early 4th century AD. So they basically reflecting the paganic sepulchral culture in the region, as well as this Angianterium form in a cobalt blue, and the beakers from 4th century, very typically 4th century, maybe indications of pagan burials in the region during the Christianization, because the region has been Christianized in 4th century already, very, I would say, densely. So we believe that the paganic tradition has continued also in the 4th century, with those, evidenced by those finds from the burials, as well as this Angianteria from 2nd to 3rd century, and this early 1st century AD Angianteria from the region, and this type of bulbous glass with a globular shape of body and with a narrow neck, as well as out-curved rim, which are very typical for Western Asia Minor and normally dated to Middle Roman, to mid-3rd to early 4th century AD. And Isings has already dated or classified this form in her typology in the 1950s into 104B. And this form is becoming some reliefs at the beginning of the 4th century and being sort of degenerated in this form, and continued until the 5th century AD. The speaker form is very typical for Western Asia Minor. We know it also from Ephesus, but from Tire, we also know them. We know that they were frequently used in burials, because normally if you would just use this glass, the speaker form, this would cut your lip. So we believe that they were just only used as burial items, as good burial goods at that time. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Laflı, for this transparent glass objects, and which represent tradition, which is very common in the Mediterranean,
Yes.
And now we proceed to our next presentation,
Yes.
Which is going to be again by Professor Laflı, perhaps. I don't know, with is a joint presentation, a joint paper by Professor Ergün and Professor Laflı.
Yeah.
And the title is Ethno-Archaeological Approaches Through Late Ottoman Postcards from the Turkish Towns in the Cayster Valley.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry, maybe this is too many, but I'm alone and trying to sort of
no, it's
sorry
just
about
fine. You are very good.
Thank you very much, Maria. It's very kind of you. But thank you so much, Maria. This is really lovely.
It's a pleasure. It's a very pleasant and of course enlightening always.
Thank you very much, Maria.
Presentation.
Very sweet of you. Now I need a little bit of your help too, because this is a lot of Byzantine things here. So I need your help for this. Let me proceed.
If I could, of course.
Yes.
But we have time.
Thank you very much.
Time. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes. No problem.
So,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is a report that I already published in London some couple of years ago. I don't remember when it was actually. Everything started with a postcard in the region. Then it became large and large and large. This is how archaeology it is. You always start with a little thing, then it becomes so big at the end. So I hope that I wish that you would like this, also my results, I hope. So the region that I tried to compile, or I tried to make together, was again the rural areas of Izmir, not on the coastline, but in the rural areas in the southeastern part of Izmir, where the Cayster Valley is, as I said, Bayındır, Tire, Ödemiş. And this time I'm going to try to do something with 19th century and 20th century. Well, this is the postcard. Who is guilty for all this research? It's a postcard from 1940s, 1950s, I guess. Hussein would know better than myself because Hussein is himself from Bayındır. And we even discussed it with Hussein a couple of times. It is a church, clearly a church of 19th century, and then it has been used as a cinema, as ülke sineması in 1960s, 70s, and then collapsed at the beginning of 1980 or 1990. And then today it has been restored, and today it is being used as a library. Or a cultural center in Bayındır. So I would like to show you our results from this area. Let me just start with the first thing. Yes. Well, this is the picture that we have taken with Binnur Hanım in 2010, sometimes 2016, 17, something like this. They were still restoring the church. It's basically an Armenian church. The problem is, though, this tower, this clock tower, does not really match with this type of building. So this is another discussion. Should it be the Greek church or should it be the Armenian church in Bayındır? But what we know is that we have this huge building, this Armenian church building in the region, in Bayındır. And it has been today restored and being reused again. But within the church, we found several pieces. First of all, we found this very interesting cross, which is clearly an Armenian cross. And we know that the Armenian culture in the 19th century in the region was already known through sources like, for instance, this mosque in the region of Tire, in Ödemiş, which could be an Armenian church previously. Within this church, we have found several inscriptions in Armenian. For instance, this one with three lines that we can clearly see: grave of Voskan, son of Pilgrim Hohan, November 15, 1865, with the scissor and with another item, which is being used by tailors at that time. So this should be an Armenian tailor who was a pilgrim who went to Jerusalem from Bayındır, and his name was Hohan, and he has been, his name was Vosk, and he was the son of Hohan, and passed away in 1865 and buried in the church. And he was perhaps a tailor in the region. A second inscription is this one, which is a grave of Farrier Karabet's daughter Hrispime, who passed away July 19th, 1866. So we know two names now from here: Karabet, Farrier, as well as Hrispime. Hrispime is a very common female name in the region. And then we have this one too, very interesting one. I think 5 lines. Which is translated, this is the grave of locksmith Sahak's daughter, Takuhi Kachatur's wife, who is resting, passed away in November 1864. So now we know that there was a locksmith whose name was Sahak and Takudi Kachatur. Very interesting. The gravestone of a deceased woman of the name of her spouse had also been included beside her father's name. This should be due to her marriage. Single Armenian women only had identity with their father's name at that time. So they were similar to us in the 19th century. Now we have another one in Western Armenian from this church in Bayındır, which has been built in the wall of the church, which is indicated. This is gravestone of Vartan. It should be before 1850s, most probably in the first half of 19th century. So this is very important for us because it is perfectly showing us that the church was used at the beginning of 19th century, and there must be some different, periods for the church. There is this huge stone in the Museum of Ödemiş, bilingual, Turkish, Ottoman, and Armenian, which is translated 1897. This is the grave of, from Aleppo, Greek Catholic Anton, son of Rufael Gatsal, who is resting with the Lord at the age of 74, January 7, 1897. And the same has been repeated in the Ottoman part, in the Turkish part, beneath the inscription. Very interesting, because this is a marble which has been reused and has been taken from an ancient building. And very interestingly, it's a Greek Catholic, Anton from Aleppo, who lives in Cayster Valley at the end of 19th century. But the language is in Armenian and not Greek. And it has been also sort of bilingually repeated in Ottoman. So this is very interesting for the cosmopolitic structure of Cayster Valley at the end of 19th century. There is another one in the Museum of Ödemiş, which is this one here. You can clearly see from the edge that it is used as a Cornish block in the 3rd, 4th century AD. Again, transcribed in Armenian with, this is the grave of locksmith Bogos, goldsmith locksmith Bogos, who lost his life March 11th, 1841. Bogos is a very famous name. It's normally Catholic Armenian name, but we know that he was goldsmith and locksmith in the region in the 19th century, mid-19th century. This is another one from the Museum of Tire, or no, Ödemiş, I guess, which is translated. This is the grave of, sorry about that. I need to just put it away. Sorry. We can clearly see this is the grave of Navas of Krikor, grave on 29 something, because the stone has been broken. So we know now the names Navas, Krikor, and they had a grave here. This is another stone from Tire this time. Again, a Byzantine element reused by Armenians in Western Armenian language. Here is the transcription, and the translation is none buried from Mush, Hagop, son of someone, 1179, which is very interesting because the person came from Mush, from southeastern Turkey to from eastern Turkey to Cayster Valley at the beginning of 19th century. Very interesting. So I got two more things, Maria, for you. I would need your help for this. Two 19th century Greek inscriptions from the Cayster Valley. The Greek inscriptions are fewer than the Armenian ones. This is the first one. I tried to translate it, but I had my hell. My impression that it should be a building inscription rather than a gravestone. So I would need a little bit your help, Maria, for this. I also asked to my colleagues in Athens, because there was this huge symposium last year. But they said there are some words that they didn't really understand. So I checked again and again. It's a 19th century inscription, but in form of an unknown Byzantine period type of thing, from 11th, 12th, 13th century. I couldn't really find some words. And the second one is this one. Clearly, we can see a Greek cross, another rosette here. I believe this should be a fountain, from a fountain. And then sort of painted again with blue. And you can clearly see the inscription here. I try to sort of, I try to understand it. I come to the conclusion there must be an onomastic here, but I'm not sure. I need your help. I need some Greek help for this. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, really. Again, it was, like a storm, but a very interesting and, rich material with so many implications with ethnography, population, culture, nowadays views on these objects, which are now a museum objects. And of course, scientific subject of our scientific questions and things we have to reconsider and considerations. And with this paper, we, I think, have finished all the presentation before the presentation of the conferencier principale, Professor Mariana Ritschl, who is the keynote speaker of our session. and she's going to present and discuss the remarks on the 7 papers on the ancient Cayster Valley. Please, Professor Rieschle, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for very interesting papers. We'll discuss them later. I would like first to share a little bit of my thoughts on the Cayster Valley, where I spent so much time in the past. So I would like to share my screen. Oh my goodness. And okay, just a moment. I'll show you some slides that I have prepared. If I manage to do it.
Yes, we have time. Take your time.
Okay, just a moment. Okay. Do you see it now?
Yes, we can see it, and you can open it more wide,
Yes.
make it more wider if you want.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Replying to my friend's request, Ergün's request, I will take a moment, it will not be too long, at the conclusion of this session to share insights about the Cayster River Valley and reflect on the presentations delivered by our esteemed colleagues. Over the course of 6 years spent on epigraphic surveys in the Cayster River Valley, I really delved into the depths of this captivating region. The visionary and the midwife, if I may say so, using a famous Socratic metaphor, behind this undertaking was Hassan Malai, whose inspiration led me to embark on this exploration. In remembrance of his pivotal contributions to the realms of Turkish and global science of antiquity, I dedicate this discourse to his memory. Additionally, my encounters in the picturesque town of Birgi introduced me to the remarkable figure and expert Amir Basharan Bilek, to whom I extend the dedication of my contribution. Turkey can really take pride in nurturing the talents of these two outstanding individuals and experts. Prompted by Hassan Malai's initiative and vision to assume responsibility for the Cayster Valley, which would allow him the necessary time for his crucial research in the Hermos River Valley, his study that has reshaped our understanding of the Hermos Valley and laid the foundation for numerous scholarly works, I embarked on my exploration of the Cayster River Valley in 2006. This commitment persisted with a month dedicated to field work each year until the culmination of the project in 2013, so precisely 10 years ago. It's imperative to acknowledge that with the encouragement of the late Professor Gerhard Dobesch, my endeavor received support from the Austrian Academy of Sciences. Over these 6 years of dedicated research, I've encountered a spectrum of moments from the sublime to the less pleasant, which is a natural facet of such endeavors. My exploration took me through over 100 villages in the region, to be exact, about 120 villages. Many of them I've revisited multiple times. Along this journey, I had the privilege of meeting numerous remarkable individuals, simple people from the countryside, forming enduring friendship with some of them. My overarching impression of the Cayster River, which we see here, valley, is that of an exceptionally beautiful and fertile region, seemingly tailor-made for sustaining life. You see some slides from the villages of this region. The historical resonance of this land is profound, particularly evident in the lower stretches of the valley, extending all the way to the city of Tyre, once part of the Ephesian territory, as we heard in the first lecture. This attests to the area's paramount importance within Roman Asia Minor. Yet the vestiges of ancient communities, settlements, village settlements, extend far beyond the confines of that part of the valley, tracing the river's course and all the way to the Kilbian Plain, arguably its most enchanting segment. Some of the slides are from this region, the Kilbian Plain. In the tapestry of Roman history, I envision this region as a densely populated landscape, adorned with numerous rural communities, dotting the plains and embracing the slopes of gentle hills. These lands, meticulously cultivated and prosperous, same as today, seem to embody the zenith of this area's historical grandeur. Without undue exaggeration, one might posit that the Roman era stands as the apogee of the storied history of this remarkable region. My peregrinations in the Cayster River Valley resulted in the discovery of about 100 new inscriptions, almost all of them Greek, which is a statistical expectation of one per visited village. However, reality diverged, as many villages, despite multiple visits, yielded no findings. This bounty could have been more substantial, should have been more substantial, and I'm confident that Hassan Malai would have returned with a notebook brimming with the copies of inscriptions, although perhaps not quite as voluminous as his dedicated Hermos notebooks, because the Hermos River Valley is unrivaled in its wealth as far as epigraphical monuments are concerned. The results of my surveys were published in the book form 3 years ago, to 2020, under the title New Inscriptions from the Cayster River Valley, and you see the exterior of the book. The challenge that I mentioned, that I visited many sites on multiple occasions, but never saw a single stone. This challenge extends beyond a mere scarcity of epigraphic material, which can be hardly expected in an area of such historical richness. A pivotal factor, in my opinion, is the volume of illegal excavations and the illicit trade of antiquities, a predicament not exclusive to this part of Turkey or Turkey itself, but a global issue. In my view, a proactive measure to counteract this issue involves monitoring the sites known to be susceptible to illicit activities. This could include salvage excavations conducted promptly, local museums in Tyre and Ödemiş, although now I hear that the Tyre Museum has been closed. I am going to ask Ergün about the details of that. So the local museums, so there is only one now in Ödemiş, should play a pivotal role in this endeavor. Likewise, offering increased incentives for the surrender of accidentally discovered archaeological artifacts might encourage individuals harboring such artifacts to deliver them to local museums. It is also crucial to address the prevailing fear of law enforcement among the local population, fostering a more subtle and tactful approach from museums in dealing with these matters. I am, however, optimistic about the epigraphic exploration of the Cayster River Valley. I hope it will continue, since the advancement of our understanding of the ancient history of this region, and not only ancient history, but as we saw, Byzantine and later history, critically depends on it. Achieving meaningful progress in this realm requires not only a serious commitment to such research, but also the unwavering persistence to overcome challenges and adversities. Only through such dedicated efforts can we anticipate truly fruitful results. Now, after this short excursion into my own experience, I would like to start the discussion on the papers. If you agree, I propose that we first that we go, of course, in the same order as the papers were delivered, and ask the audience if they have any comments, and then I could comment on most of the papers, not all of them, because I'm not an expert on lamps or glassware, things like that, but I think I have questions or comments on most of the papers. Do you agree that we now continue with the discussion?
Of course. Thank you, Professor Itzl, for this extraordinary, references in the past, because we have to mention the starting points of the research, the people and their contribution, who had collaborated on certain projects, and now I think the results are very interesting. They put new materials and new questions on our research, and we go on with the younger colleagues, which is what we always wish for research and for life generally. So thank you so much. And of course, your proposal to discuss on the papers one by one, if there are any questions, is very welcome, if Professor Laflı also agrees. And I would just wanted to ask about this project. It looked like to me that Professor Laflı had organized this session like a volume. When we work on volumes on a region, we have Amorion, or we have Laconia in Peloponnese, or somewhere in Italy or in Spain. We make this. We have this order, the introduction with the sources, the written testimonia, and the data, the epigraphy, and everything. Is it going to be a volume published in this order? Is it something that you have under, your plans, perhaps, Professor Laflı? You're not hearing. You're not with us?
No, I'm with you, of course. I'm with you, of course.
Okay.
So, should we maybe start with the discussion? What would you say? No, you don't want to?
I didn't ask. I didn't hear now you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about that.
There are some noises from the repairs nearby. I'm sorry for this.
Yeah.
That's why I keep my, my
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, I just want to say, should we start with the discussion right now? Maybe Marianne she would like to make some comments about our presentation, because she's the expert for all the papers.
As I suggested, let's first ask the audience. Okay, first paper, Paolo Di Benedetto, about the sources of the region. Does anybody have a comment or a question or whatever? Let's start with Paolo. He was the first one. Any comment?
I want to just congratulate Dr. Benedetto for this presentation, because I found it very clever the way he tried to use it for the topography, the testimonies, I mean the written data we had, from sources we all know, but has a new, a new way to view these testimonies, and just try to relate it on the topography, on the geology, on the structure of the cities and the rural parts of the area. So I found it, you have to continue with this. There are so many other, I think, elements and information that could, because you have a new method to work on this material. So it's very, very welcome, and thank you. And of course, Byzantine sources reproduce the same thing, we have some mentions and about the flora and the fauna of the region using the same the text that you have commented on. And of course, it's a rhetorical, it's not always a real commentary, it's a rhetorical, like a literature way of thinking for a region. But again, I think you can find some information for the later times on. So about Ignatios Diakonos, it's a rhetor of 9th century, early 9th century. It's very easy to find it. I can send you if you email me the whole text. And in an epistle, in a letter, mentions the Cayster, the birds of the Cayster, which reminds us of the Virgilios Georgica that you have presented. So I stop here. Thank you again.
Any other comments? Or maybe you want to reply?
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Lentini. Yeah, I've been working for the last part of the year of this year on this subject. I find that it is very interesting and it is important in order to deepen inside the history of Asia Minor. I think that Cayster is important and relative link between the regions of Asia Minor. And as you considered before, I think that literary sources can be interpreted as nowadays. Maybe the region preserved the same characteristics, features, such as the fauna and the flora. Maybe I would like to one day to see the region personally, because it's very interesting. And thank you for your suggestion, advice. I think that I will continue to study these testimonies and the other aspects and features about archaeology and especially epigraphy. I think that epigraphy is very important to understand the situation of the Cayster Valley. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Maybe I have a couple of things on, especially the. I didn't know about the existence of this colia. I was really surprised about the appearance of the Cayster Valley in the Homeric text. Then it makes this area that perhaps imperially wide was not that important, but it makes it important to connect it. And I was really surprised to see that connection between the Katakekaumene and the Cayster region, because again, you have the perspective that we have from the Cayster Valley normally comes from Ephesus. So you arrive at the harbor, you have all these problems that the Cayster Valley and the Cayster River causes. But then when you look into the evidence, also like the evidence that Professor Laflı has shown, then you see that this area has more of this Lydian element. So it's kind of a very interesting thing to see that the sources are looking at from perhaps that Ephesian perspective, and even us. But then when you look into the rural area, it's more connected. So that's why I encourage to look at, for example, all that evidence from, as Professor Rachel was saying, from the Hermus Valley. and just to see how these two places are connected. So thank you very much for the for these presentation, in which I mean, like these regions can be more or less be better understood, especially with the appearance from the Homeric text.
Paolo, you want to say something?
Yeah, I would like to know. So I'm very honored to meet the most important scholar about the Cayster, Mariana Rachel. So I'm very kind. I'd like to know if the situation of Ephesus is strictly related to Cayster, because in the sources I'm doing this question to Professor Mariana Riekel. I think that literary sources don't take in light this kind of problem, while the epigraphic and other sources, geology, for example, from this kind of sources, it is illustrated. What about this?
Well, what I can say is that my focus was not so much on Ephesus, although I must say at some point I had trouble with the team excavating at Ephesus, because they thought I was intruding into their territory. It was really awful and not very kind of them, but it's forgotten. So I avoided this part as much as I could, although it is Tyre itself and the region west of Tyre. So Ephesus was not my primary concern, although it is very obvious, and you pointed out so well in your paper how important this part was for Ephesus itself. The sources of water, the very fertile land, the properties of Artemis, which are so numerous in this area. It all shows how important this was. And this is not a small region. It's, let's say, 50 kilometers from Ephesus, and all of this was included in the territory. So imagine how important Ephesus was itself by having such a large territory. And there were fisheries there and whatnot. I mean, it's really... but it wasn't so. I wasn't really that much interested in that. I was more interested in what Aitor said about the Hermos Valley. And Aitor, you are not right. Actually, these regions could not be more different. Actually, it's very difficult to find almost any connection, any similarities between the Hermos and the Cayster Valley, which was surprising for me. Of course, I did not know this before I started. And I was really surprised. And thank you, Paolo. I missed this, stupid thing that Stephanus of Byzantium says about, this is what we were talking about the connections between Katakekaumene and the Cayster, because they both start with Ka, or have this element, this syllable meaning to burn. There's no similarities. Obviously, he has never been either to Katakekaumene or to the Cayster, or he would know how different these regions are. I had the pleasure and the fortune to visit both regions. And the Katakekaumene is actually burnt land, because, as you said, there were 3 volcanoes, small volcanic cones, and they erupted at some historical period. People were already there. And the lava is all over the place. So where you go, you cannot miss it. While this other region, the Cayster village, is so fresh, so green, so full of water, so full of sources, and this beautiful river, which was of course much more beautiful in antiquity than today, is running all through the area. So there's no similarities whatsoever, and they are just stupid. I mean, Stephanus or whoever thought about this pseudo etymology of the names, he has no idea about either of the regions. So this is something I can say from my personal experience. They have no idea. They have never been there. Otherwise, they would not have said that. Or Stephanus, or maybe a source. I think he's the only one who says that. And then Eustathius or whoever repeats it after him without any original investigation. So late antique and Byzantines avoid.
Yeah, I think so.
And as Aitor say, go to the, or maybe you said, I don't know, go to the place yourself if you can.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I wanted to tell you, Paolo, about the value of this Ethnica of Stephanus. I hope it's not all like that. I'm sure it's not. And another very interesting thing is when you talked about the Iliad and the Asios Leimon, of course, I mentioned this in my book too. When I was thinking about it, I immediately remembered the Hittite sources. The Hittite sources call this region Asuwa. So this is a very old name, Asia, Asia, that we have today, which is actually Hittite or Luvian, and the Cayster River Valley could be in the heart of this region of Asia, or Asuwa, as they call it in Hittite sources. And so he mentions, Homer, the Asian meadows. And this immediately points to the area, how lush it is, how green it is, how well watered it is, how rich and fertile. But so the persistence of Hittite or Luvian names in the Iron Age and afterwards is really remarkable. I mean, maybe it's not unique. Toponyms, they tend to stay, to be preserved. Everywhere, not only here. But thank you very much for your very rich talk, and please continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. If you agree, we can pass to Aitor's contribution on the Summa Honoraria and the epigraphic boundaries in the Middle Cayster Valley. Anybody questions or comments? I see maybe Aitor as the future epigrapher working in this region. Who knows? Because he seems interested.
Well, it's a very interesting region.
It is.
No, what I was trying to say, I mean, regarding the comment about the Hermes Valley and the Cayster Valley, is that of course, I mean, the regions are completely different. But for me, when I was just I first started going into this region from Ephesus, right? You go through the corpora, but then you just realize that you are more or less in a different, in a very, very specific context that makes it almost completely, not completely, but it's slightly alien to the very, urban territory that you have in Ephesus. And then you go to these lands that, I mean, of course, the epigraphic habit is different. Like you have the confession inscriptions in the north, like in the Kataka Kaumeni and so on. But for example, like the dating methods and all this kind of that, and the Katoikia, the Komai system, like I was really, really interested in to see how, like the before Ephesus gets more or less control, or like this control of this region, like how that, I mean, for example, with my paper, like this idea that like essentially like two Katoikiae that belong to two different cities, they have very similar procedures to go on. So that is telling us that, I mean, and you published inscriptions like from the Hellenistic time as well, that like Ephesus gets these Artemis lands, also like the emperors like confirm this thing, but then like people in the plain, they are acting almost as I mean, as you would do, like you don't care too much whether this is you belong to Ephesus or you belong to Ipaipa. Like the connectivity between these lands that has no geographical, I mean, as you see, and you have visited. I was only once, but it's a really open plain. Compare, for example, to what you have in the Hermes Valley, where you have Katakeko, slightly more rugged. But like, yeah, like I was really surprised to see that. We always consider like, this is the civic territory of Ephesus, this is the civic territory of another, so this has to be different. But then when you go to the to this specific area, you see that these rural communities, they were deeply connected, regardless of like the civic institution, like the eponymous magistrate, and that this prevails. And that was for me, that's why this area is so surprising, because you have a very, let's say, rural communities, and then probably like the biggest city in Asia, and both of them like coming together at the same time. Because yeah, in the northeastern part of Lydia, it's not the same. Like Sardis is slightly away, and the cities like Saitai, they're really small. But like in this case, you have the huge urban settlement and then these rural communities like coming together, and that contrast, I think that it's extremely interesting.
These rural communities were very wealthy.
Yeah.
Very, how can I say, sure of themselves. Very, they consider themselves important. They even copied the city with in their institutions. They had no inferiority complex whatsoever. That's my idea. That's my impression, anyway.
No, it's true. Like all this ephismata, all these civic procedures, and so on. That's exceptional to have like that quantity of also of inscriptions and that interest.
But if I am allowed to comment on some details of your talk, first, I'm not sure that Louis Robert was wrong. I cannot believe that he can be wrong about Silogos. Think about that again. I think Silogos is a Silogos. Silogos
Do you think it's the assembly?
Is an association, assembly, a group of people. It can be. I don't believe he can be wrong. If he is wrong, then I'm going to start working on a figure. Stop working on it. And then you seem to say that, if I understood correctly, that Summa Honoraria, this whole institution, is not a regular thing. It's not something that's regularly done. That's if I correctly understood. But why do they then say in one inscription "Kathos et Hosem," as it is the custom? So one person says, as it is the custom, I paid the summa honoraria, and then above that, I gave more money because I was asked by the village or something like that. So how do you understand this?
So my view on this, like this is actually like what like this expression appears in the very latest one in 270, 72.
Doesn't matter.
Well, it matters in the idea that, I mean, what I was just trying to say is that probably a process that is started as something voluntary, like with exceptional big constructions, like the great baths that we have in this. So like when it starts, when we have this first summa honoraria, it always says what is the purpose, like who is encouraging it, and like there is a process in which we might consider this slightly more for a specific purpose. But when you reach 270, I guess that there is a point in which there is kind of a summa honoraria in place, but it is not at the beginning, because there is a process in which you have the encouragement, you have the purpose of it, and it's not exactly connected with the office itself. I mean, what I'm just trying to say, I mean, this is a big debate whether you would pay for office in a Greek city or in a Greek civic institution or not. And the problem is that these inscriptions, because it's one of the few ones that we have so clear that it says hyper and all this kind of thing, they've been used by people who don't know much about these places. They only take it as, oh, summa honoraria, these are the inscriptions that we have from the eastern part of the empire. But I do think that there is an evolution in which, it also happens with other contributions in the 3rd century. See that then it becomes obligatory because I do think that there is an evolution, like there is a chronological evolution into how these payments were made, and until the point that we get that this is customary.
But at the moment, it can't be proved either way, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but like it's been the problem is like it's been assumed the other way.
Do you think that Ephesus could have an influence on this? How did you study the case of Ephesus? So
in Ephesus we don't have any record.
We don't have at all
any record for payment of office. Of course, we have the one that pays normally the most, and probably the closest that we can have is the agronomos, with the setting of bread prices, and of course those who organize games, and for these ones we know that there is a payment involved that you have to.
So in which cities in the region do we have summa honoraria?
So like this kind of evidence, like exactly saying Hiped and plus the magistrate, it doesn't appear. Like what you know is that, yeah, like what you would have is that, of course, you know that for some certain offices, like it's not only expected, it's probably almost obligatory to provide this type of contribution. So the closest, I mean, as we have is the agronomos in Ephesus, and then also like we also have, of course, all the magistrates providing perhaps money for the coins, or at least supervising the coins, like the coin production that we have, the strategoi. But we don't have, at least as far as I know, from the 2nd and 3rd century, you have nothing like this type of evidence of saying like they are just paying to get access to the. We have, of course, the famous inscription of getting access to the bulle, like the famous inscription, like to get access to the bulle, and just the emperor saying like, please wave because he's a friend of mine. But for the office, that's why these inscriptions have been used so widely of people who don't know anything about the Cayster region. And again, it's that's why I was saying that it's a slightly more complex, like the process itself. I guess that this is a way through which like these local communities can aspire to have like bigger projects. I mean, 3 of them, they mention bathing facilities, which are extremely expensive. I mean, and as you say, these are very rich looking villages, but in the end, they're also like villages. So like you don't have the, and also we have to consider, that's one area that perhaps Paolo can also look deeper into, is that we have a huge mobility in the Cayster Valley region going to Ephesus to be like Asiarchs and all this kind of thing. So we have Epaipans going to Ephesus, and also from Daldis, right? Like the famous cases are Artemidoros of Daldis going to Ephesus, but it's very hard to pin down. Actually, in one of my inscriptions that is from the Epaipan territory, the last one, it says that the guy is from Ephesus. So he has Ephesios, but he's in Epaipan territory because we know that from the cadastre list. So there's a huge mobility of people who want to be bigger, and then they go to Ephesus, but they also keep connections with Epaipa and all these small areas at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? If not, we can thank you and continue. Ali Özkan, he left us, unfortunately, because I had some questions for him, but never mind. Then we continue to the paper by Eda Güngör Alper. She's still here. Maybe Ergün can translate.
Yes.
I have a question, but if somebody else has a question or a comment, I am prepared to be the second one. So any comments on the lamps? Okay, if not, I have 2 things for Eda. She mentioned the lamp from Darmara, but actually Darmara is the old name for modern village Eskioba, so she can change this. She probably found it in the inventory of the museum. And yeah, this is a good point to ask Ergün. What happened to the Tire Museum? Why was it closed? Ergün, can you explain in a couple of sentences?
Yes. Well,
I know they had the problems, but closing the museum is really,
yes.
I'm surprised and shocked.
True.
What happened?
Yeah, Eda would know better than myself too. She could
Yeah.
also contribute, but let me just tell you a few words. I was there last Friday or something like this. I don't remember when it was. I think last Friday we were there, and I had the opportunity to talk to the people over there. But I would like to ask to Eda about this. Eda, siz ne dersiniz? Siz söyleyin, ben bunları çevireyim. Tire Müzesi'nin
Tire-
kapanma sebepleri. Heh, buyurun.
Depremde zarar gördüğü için bina,
Ah,
evet,
deprem-
İzmir depreminden sonra oradaki eserler Ödemiş Müzesi'ne
I understand. Because of the earthquake.
ancak yeni bir yer arayışı var Tire'de. Tekrar eserler yeni Tire'ye geri gelecek. Yani aslında müze geçici bir süreliğine kapalı.
Okay.
Yes, it's just preliminarily closed because of the last earthquake, which was very devastating for the region. But as she says, the material will be just sort of
It will reopen.
back to the area. Yeah.
Do you know, do they know when exactly they will reopen? Or not exactly, approximately?
Eda, ne düşünüyorsun o konuda?
Belli değil henüz ne zaman
Not,
açılacak.
not
Okay.
yet.
Thank you very much. I thought it was something worse. Okay, so this is not so bad. It will reopen because I'm very attached to this museum. Okay, I have one question for Eda. She mentioned that there is a lamp where there is a, if I understood correctly what you translated, I didn't hear her words herself. I don't know why. That there is a representation of Eros. Was it an Eros with a snake?
Yes, snake.
Is
she
it?
says.
Is this
It's
what you
lamp.
said?
Yes.
That's very unusual. I don't know of any Eros anywhere holding a snake or being represented. Where is the snake exactly? Yılan nerede?
British Müzesi kataloglarında Eros, yılan tutan Eroslu kandiller var.
He is holding the snake, but that's very unusual. How do we know it is an Eros? Does he have wings, or what, how do you recognize him as an Eros? Do you want to translate?
Onun yılan olduğunu nereden anladık diye soruyor. Anladın zaten.
Yani benzer figürler British Müzesi kataloglarındaki kandiller üzerinde de var. Benzer Eros tasvirleri. Yine yılan tutan uzun ince bir şerit halinde gözüküyor ve üzerinde de böyle ince çizgiler var.
Well, she actually got this image
From the catalog.
Exactly, from the museum of British Museum, and then she sort of discerned the snake through these very thin stripes, which are actually sort of meaning being sort of snake or a snake.
Could it be Heracles maybe?
Herakles olabilir mi? Ne düşünüyorsun?
Because he killed the snakes as a boy. Is it an Eros boy?
Ama Eros olduğu belli, kanatları var arkasında.
He has wings. Yeah, that's what. It's very unusual. Anyway, thank you. Something to think about. I'm very interested in Eros and his representations. I've never heard of an Eros holding a snake. It shouldn't be a snake. Could it be a thunderbolt? Because Eros with thunderbolt is known. Thunderbolt.
Yıldırım demeti olabilir mi diyor Eda. Yıldırım demeti olabilir mi acaba diye sordum.
Yani sanmıyorum ama tekrar bakarım, tekrar incelerim. Teşekkür ederim.
If you allow me, I just Googled and I found that there is a paper from Şenol Bekçi at Ankara Universitesi, collision of Eros and Thanatos in the snake. And there are some representations of a figure like Eros with a snake. I don't know why.
That's probably
it's a very interesting subject. You have to search it.
Could it be Thanatos? Thanatos also has wings sometimes. Yes. Not Eros.
Perhaps.
Love can be deathful. Deathful. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on the lamps?
I have a question only out of ignorance, but it's about do we have many or any representations of Artemis Artemis being so, which is one of the problems when I started doing work on this region, because you have the Artemis of Ephesus, which is very important, but you also have the Artemis from Epipha. And sometimes I was just wondering about the presence of, if it's kind of local production, whether it makes any appearance as it does on the local coins. So I was just wondering whether we have any Artemis-like or Artemis-inspired images on the lamps.
Artemis'le ilgili hiç kandiller üzerinde yani figür yok. Tire'de ve ya da çevresinde bulunan. Doğru mu anladım bilmiyorum.
Evet evet, doğru Eda. Doğru. Very good
Evet.
question. Very good question. But no, unfortunately not from Tire. Very good question. Yeah. Metropolis'te var mı Eda? Artemis'te?
Artemis'te yok.
Metropolis'te de yok. Also not in Metropolis at all. Because Eda worked in several excavations and museums. She worked in Metropolis firstly. She did her PhD. Torbalı'da çalıştı. Doktoranı onun üzerine yaptın değil mi Eda?
Evet.
Her PhD was based in Metropolis, but then she worked in the Agora of Smyrna for the lamps. And she also worked eventually in Tire, in Cayster Valley. Agora'da var mıydı Eda acaba? Agora'dakilerde? Orada da yoktur.
Yok. Maalesef. Yani üstünde yok en azından. Belki başka ama hani kandiller üstünde yok.
Evet.
What about the god, the man, the moon god? There was Selene. I saw that, Selene. But what about the male god of the moon? Man, no?
Men diye hani ay tanrısı Men var mı Eda?
Yok, Selene var. Selene de zaten yani başka hiçbir yerde ben görmedim. Sadece Metropolis'te var kandil üstünde. Bir de ilk defa Tire'de buldum. Aynı yani form olarak benzer formlar her yerde var. Ama Selene figürü olarak başka yerde yok. Sadece Tire ve Metropolis'te var. Şeyde de yok. Efes kandillerinde de hiç görmedim mesela Selene'yi. Yani neden tercih edildi bilmiyorum.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much. It was very interesting. And now we can move to Ergün and his very interesting and rich paper on latest archaeological discoveries in the Cayster Valley. Comments? Questions? Since he asked me directly about some inscriptions, I can say no and no.
Really?
I don't know either of these two inscriptions.
Really?
The second one,
yes.
the Christian one, I'm not really that interested in, but yeah, I could take a look at it. But the first one, the phallus stone, is very interesting, the Atalos one. And I thought that I could see more letters on it, not just the Atalos, the name, but something else. Although I used to be crazy about inscriptions. I would see letters everywhere, but they were not necessarily letters as such. And also the other inscription with the bulle and the demos, which is very interesting. I don't know that either. That's in Tire, you said, yeah?
Yes, and it is in Tire since 14th century. It's like 600 years standing over there. And I asked to Hussein, because Hussein is collecting all these Orientalists in the 19th century. And he said he doesn't find either from Premerstein. That's not existing. So it's kind of interesting. So what would you say about the city where it should be assigned?
I don't know. Could be.
Maybe Ephesus?
It's too far. I don't think
too far away.
No.
I think it's Epipha. I think it's Epipha.
It's
Epipha, yeah, Epipha, I guess.
Why would they transfer it all the way from Epipha to Tire? It could be Tyra. I don't know. Maybe it was a polis at some time.
Right. The most important thing is about also how they sort of managed to deface it, because most of the parts have been sort of damaged through this carving. So we are glad that we have at least this Agatha too.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, we wouldn't know it either. Other stone, the Christian.
stone is
Yes.
from a tumulus, you said, right?
My impression, yes, my impression, because it came like just suddenly and just surprisingly, just in the last 5 years, and most of the time, if they just sort of dig out a new illegal thing in the region, most of them are tumulus. So I think that they also brought the material to the museum. And about the letters on the stone, well, I checked it very carefully, but I will check again. I will go and check again.
But why would it be in a tumulus? It's a funerary monument. It was not in
That is true. That is true, Marianne. But I should tell you, yes, in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, the first time that fallow stones were published first, they were reported most of the time from tumulus, because Efa Christoph, my colleague, has this article in Epigraphica Anatolica, as you know, and she has mentioned about 2 or 3 places where these phallic stones were discovered in situ, and the 2 or 3 places in Mysia were tumuli of the region.
Inside the tumulus.
And not inside, no. They were just sort of marking the tumulus. They were just, yeah, sort of, at the top, most of the time at the top, but sometimes in front of the tumulus. They are basically close to the Turkish tradition, balbal, the Central Asiatic balbal tradition, some sort of grave or burial markers, but very, very few of them have been inscribed. So this is one of that, and strangely in Cayster Valley. So that's an interesting combination.
Yeah. Check if there are more letters.
I will, and let you know about that.
I think I saw. Maybe I.
And onomastically, what would you say about Attalos? Is it a frequent name?
Yeah, it's very common.
In here in Caysteros?
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah? Yeah, we cannot sort of make any generalization about the name, right?
It's Anatolian, I would say. It's Anatolian, but it's common. So.
Yeah. Thank you for this. Yeah.
You're welcome.
About the Christian inscription, I would like to say I sort of mixed it with one of the find that you had already from your AST reports 2012 or 2011 when you were doing the survey in the region. You reported about one 4th century inscription from Ödemiş or Kiraz in the region, because you report about 10 unpublished inscriptions in this report. So I thought maybe we rediscovered the same that you found.
No,
but it's
I don't
not
know.
the same. Yeah.
No.
Because the region is very rich epigraphically, as you know. So
it is.
Everyone can be fitted.
When I go there, they close when I go there, they close all the doors. Well, I must say one problem is probably, I'm sorry to say that I'm a woman. And maybe in these villages, people are not so happy to see a woman, parading around without male companionship or whatever. The other thing is I'm foreigner, which is also not it could be a minus for some people. Although I started speaking Turkish, I had to learn something, so I wasn't completely dumb. But I think that some of the prejudices did not work in my favor, but I did my best. Maybe when a Turkish man went there on a survey, he would be quite successful, more successful than I was. But I mean, what can you do? I cannot change my sex. or become Turkish. I can learn Turkish a little bit, but that's as much as I can do.
No, you have to invite male colleagues.
Yeah, they were male colleagues. There was a male driver always with us, but it wasn't enough.
Yes, you have more. You have to find out.
One year, I was the woman in the team, and the commissary. That you are followed by a commissary was also a woman. Female. So 2 women, parading in the villages, and we had a lot of trouble, I must say. At some point, we had to call the gendarme. So. The protection, because it was really a terrible situation. But that was the only time it happened in 6 years. That was the only really bad situation. And later we heard that this village was really, I don't know, problematic. Everybody in the region knew about the people from this village. So
Yeah,
it
wow.
happened, and I didn't go there again.
Yes.
Alone or with a male.
But we have to take steps, and I think everything is going to be better sometime.
I'm not so sure.
You're the pioneer.
I would suggest that a man goes and works in surveys.
Yes, because Mariana, what you did was so pioneering for all of us, because epigraphy is the keyword for Cayster. I mean, especially the written objects are the ones which are the most important for the region. Every single inscription, every single monument. So yeah, so you've done a good work at that time.
Also, I think that the museums should be more active. That was my impression, that they were not doing enough. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I think that they could do more. They could do more to help researchers who come to this area and to do a lot of work on their own, to go into the villages, to ask around, and to be nice to the people. You cannot go there as policemen and, you know, frighten the people. Then nobody will show anybody anything. I mean, they are frightened of the museums and the police and gendarme and whatnot. But I know it's difficult. But
what about an institutional research center on the archaeology of the region, where the locals could contribute, working as security in infrastructures, and an investment? You know, when money goes with education and research, is something that makes people to trust more.
It would be lovely, but I don't know how feasible it is.
I'm so jealous that you have visited and worked on this extraordinary place.
But if you can believe, at the end I wanted it to end because it became too much. You know, every year, 6 years, 7 years, it becomes too much after a while, and then you get disappointed when you come back after a month with 3 or 4 descriptions.
No, you have. I'm sorry, but you have so much to give to this. You're a personality that is the first time that we met, and that you have to give so many things to young colleagues with your books, with your research. Do not be disappointed at all. Please.
I'm not now. Now it's 10 years. I've forgotten about it. But at that time, I remember that the commissaries who followed me, they always said, oh, your job is very tough because you go into the villages, you spend the whole day in the dust, in the heat and whatnot, and you get problems with the people, and then you get nothing in the end. You come back empty-headed, and they said, it's very depressing. I said, please don't mention it. I will have to go to a psychiatrist when I go home. But it's true. You have to be very tough to do a thing like that.
Yeah.
You cannot give up. But
and we are very grateful for the the books and the research, and of course for the example. Really.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have. Are there any comments on Ergün's paper, maybe from other people? If not, then we have the next paper also by Ergün, was on a Greco-Roman glass and bronze finds. I don't see. Did you talk about the bronze finds?
No, only glass. Only glass.
Only the glass. I really cannot comment on that. I don't know anything about Roman glass. It's only that this is beautiful, but maybe somebody else has a question or a comment. Whether those objects were from the Tire Museum.
Yes.
And do you know the provenance from the exact places coming from,
Yes.
Do you have a record on this?
Yes. First of all, I would like to say hello to Mr. Kurino from Athens. Welcome. Yes, about the provenances, they are more or less same with Eda's finds, because Tire is a museum which is actually very, I would say, clever and very very good in recording the prominences of the objects. So they go parallel to what Eda reported already. More or less the same villages around Tire, these rural areas where we know lots of local necropolises. So they are basically from the necropolis areas in the rural area of Tire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and the last talk was also very interesting. And I remembered seeing these Armenian inscriptions in Tire Museum, but of course I knew nothing about them. I always wished they were Greek, but yeah, what can you do? Is somebody working on them? Is anybody preparing? Because there are inscriptions. Somebody could, you know, make an edition.
Yes. Well, we
made an
yes.
edition.
Yes, we have 2 or 3 Armenian departments in Turkey right now, or even 4 in Ankara and Kayseri, and I think, I'm not sure, maybe in Istanbul. So Armenian language and not epigraphy, but the language is a little bit sort of developing in Turkey too, as a discipline itself. So Yıldız is the one who is the head of the department. And I had the assistance of her. She's really, really good for this. She got sort of course in Erivan, I think, in Armenia somehow. Originally, she was actually a TRT speaker for Turkish television. But then she changed and she became an academics in Armenian language. And yeah, we cooperated together a lot. So these are the ones that we found in Cayster Valley, but we publish also some other stuff from the other parts of Asia Minor, from Western Asia Minor, not only from this area, but also from Nazilli and Kırkağaç and other rural places. The interesting thing about Cayster Valley is that, for instance, Ödemiş is populated more with Armenian minority rather than Greek, but in Tire we had more Greek minority than Armenians. And between Tire and Ödemiş Armenians, among these societies, they were not able to understand each other because the Ödemiş Armenians were speaking Western Armenian, and the Tire ones were speaking Eastern Armenian. So there was already a problem in Cayster Valley for both of these communities. So it's very interesting in the 19th century. Yeah.
Now I remember that there was there was a whole Jewish cemetery in Tire,
huge,
in the
huge
industrial
one.
Zone.
Yes.
What is going on with that?
Well, the new mayor is very good. He's very sort of a very smart person, and then he had some contacts, and then they excavated the area. And I remember that some of those graves, some of those gravestones in Hebrew and Yiddish, and even in Ladino, they were published in Shalom, the Turkish newspaper, Turkish Jewish newspaper in Istanbul, but not scientifically. But in the 1980s and 90s, when Israel had lots of money for their people, for their academics, to send them to for diaspora Jews, somebody came from Haifa or from Jerusalem to Tire. Her name was Rosen, something Rosen, the surname, and she published some evidences from the Jewish cemetery yard. But each time when I go to Tire, I find a new one, a new one, a new one, a new one. It's a huge, huge cemetery with so many graves. So there are enough material over there to study for everybody.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and most of the stones were brought from antiques, from ancient sites like Ephesus, other places. So it's not only meaningful for 19th century, but they're also meaningful for our ancient research, for Greek and Roman times, Byzantine times. So yeah, Cayster Valley is.
You want to say that some are ancient, from ancient period?
Yeah, they're reused. They reused because in the 19th century, the Jewish community here in Izmir was very influential, and they bought some ancient sites. For instance, Notium was belonging to a Jewish guy in Izmir, and he used the blocks in Notyon on close to Colophon to build up the Lycée Alliance Internationale, the Jewish high school in Izmir. So they basically excavated the area and they found the stones and they transported to
We call
Izmir.
that devastated, not
Yes.
excavated.
Well, but this wasn't already a Jewish tradition, because I republished an inscription which was published by Hassan Malay. I published it just recently in France. It's an inscription from the 4th century by a Jewish guy who was busy, who was involved with stone transportation and stone carving in the area, even in the 4th century. So Jews were always active in Asia Minor, in Western Asia Minor, for that type of things, like for selling stones, carving stones. And I also publish some very few evidences from Phrygia, where you can see some menorah and some other type of Jewish symbols in stone quarries. So, you know, Jews were active for marble in Western Asia Minor from the Roman period.
Well, I must say, I would trade them all for Greeks, but that's my opinion. Okay, any more comments from anybody? I am out of comments, I must say.
So I wanted to perhaps ask about the when was Tire actually built up? I mean, in the like all these mosques you're mentioning, like 14th century and so on. When this region becomes slightly more urban, in that, like, what is the information that you have perhaps from Ottoman sources and so on? Like, what is the because that's of course the area that I have almost like a blank spot. So if you could just explain us a bit more about this development, that would be extremely helpful.
I think Mariana is the one who would like to respond it first. No, Mariana?
No, I don't know anything about that. I mean, the
Really?
later development.
Oh,
You're
okay.
asking about the Ottoman area, right?
Yes, the
Era,
Ottomans. Yeah,
Ottoman,
That's
right.
that's where we missed the information, Mariana.
Right.
Where we don't know, yeah.
Yes.
Right. Just last semester, I began to teach Turkish Beylik history to the Faculty of Education here in 9 Eylül. So I'm enjoying this lessons a lot, because I'm learning myself a lot about how Turks came from Middle East, from Central Asia, from where, when, and when did they settle down, and what happened exactly at that time in the 12th century, 13th century, 14th century. And my impression is that we came to Cayster Valley first at the end of 12th century and beginning of 13th century, first in small groups. But the huge groups, they came at the beginning of or mid 13th century, around 1240. I have even one new gravestone, which I did not publish it, but I'm going to publish soon. I think this is one of the very earliest Turkic evidence in Cayster Valley in mid 13th century. From that time to now, there are very few remains, actually, sort of almost no architecture. The architecture begins with Aydınoğulları, which is a Turkish beylik in the region. And one of the focus area for Aydınoğulları was here, Cayster Valley, at the beginning, but then they switched it to Ayasoluk, to Ephesus. So Cayster Valley was a landscape with Aydınoğulları in the 13th century. But
sorry to interrupt. Is this the konak in Tire? It belongs to them?
There are few things, but most of those things are actually belonging to the later phase of Aydınoğulları. For their beginning, we have almost none. I think because they had lots of things in kerpiç, in mud brick, or in wooden, so that we don't find. The first stone architecture that they started, I think that was at the end of very end of 13th century and very beginning of 14th century, like Karakadı Mosque in Tire. And I was especially interested on the Byzantine monuments and their transformation into Aydınoğulları form. And I tried to find out how many do we have on the surface. Not many, actually. In the whole Cayster Valley, we have very few churches, which were church in the original and then converted into mosque. There are not more than 3 or 4. There is one Hagia Caterini in Tire, which is a huge one, actually, with 5 transepts, with 5 naves. Which
I
is
know that
actually,
one.
you know it very well, which is a conversion of 13th, 14th century. And the rest of the buildings are actually small capella, chapel-like monuments, and not big churches, not basilicas. So this is very difficult to tell about this transformation from the locals into the Turkish population. And Aydınoğulları became very powerful in the region at the beginning of 14th century. As I said, the transformation was in the 13th century and 14th century, but most of the monuments that we have in Tire are not from this particular period. They are mostly from 15th and 16th centuries, early Ottoman period, because Tire became all in a sudden very important for early Ottomans. For some reasons, for some, I will say, geopolitical reasons that I need to learn a little bit more. I cannot really answer it now. But after the 16th century until 19th century, they were kasabas. They were not very meaningful, I would say, because they were not really lying on the main route. The main route was between Smyrna, Ephesus, and other places on the coastline, and not in Tire and Ödemiş. So they were just, I would say, not very powerful during the Ottoman period until 19th century. But the 19th century was, of course, something different for the region, for Cayster Valley.
Thank you, Ergün.
Yeah.
Maria, is this the cue for you to end the session or not? I don't know.
I want to, if there is nothing else to add, or any colleague, any last questions or any comments, I have to thank you all and congratulate all of you. I think the organization was really clever to have the young colleagues with their research, very rich and having with many promises for the future. And of course, to rely on the research, which is extremely valuable, of Professor Isle and Professor Laflı, who organized all these speeches. And I hope that I have feedback from you in the future too. So thank you all. I don't know if Professor Laflı would like to add something and say something for the next session.
Thank you very much, Maria. That's really, really sweet of you that you spend so much time with us. You just, your worthful time. I'm sure you have lots of things to do, but instead of working, you just prefer to be with us. Thank you very much.
I am honored and I learned so
for
many
being
things.
with us. This is very, very kind of you. This is very friendly of you. And also
Please.
Thank you to Mariana, because without her, this would be a very, very meaningless thing. Thank you so much for coming to this session.
Welcome.
Also, Aitor, such a promising scholar from new generation with Oxford background, which is very obvious. And thank you so much for this amazing, amazing lecture. Eleni, you came a little bit late, so you're guilty. but you've been a nice company just in our last symposium, so it's okay. But in the afternoon we are expecting to have you. Eda, çok teşekkür ederim. Gerçekten çok sağ ol. You also came early in the morning, and then she was being such supportive. Also, Paolo, you're always a big supporter for us from Italy. Please keep continuing with Asia Minor, because we still have lots of Italian archaeologists, but we have very few Italian historians in Asia Minor, and we need some more Italo-Turkic Anatolian connection to interpret things rightly. Because my impression when I come to Italy, I feel we are misinterpreting lots of Roman things in Asia Minor, especially historically. So we need new generation, new Italian colleagues in Turkey to interpret Greek and Roman heritage in Turkey in a different way. So thank you so much for all of you. Yeah, I hope that you will be again here in the afternoon section. If not, then we will be maybe 2 or 3 people. We'll see. I say just inshallah. If not, then don't worry. I will of course contact you about the publication, because this is already a lot of things today that we seriously need to think to compile. And yes, Efaristopoli, and see you in 2 hours again, hopefully, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Bye-bye, take care.
Later
Bye.
on, we are going to
Bye-bye,
see
take
you
care.
again. Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
See you later.
See you later.